Hello and welcome or welcome back. My name is Nadia, and if you've clicked into today's video, you know that I'm doing my February wrap-up. It's a couple days early, but I don't think I'm gonna read any books in the next 2 days, so I think it's fair to say that I am done with reading for February. This month I read 9 books, 5 of which were ebooks, 4 of which were hard copies. One was an ebook, but it was a DNF, so I'm not counting it towards the full count, even though I made it 60% of the way in. It was a DNF, so technically it doesn't count, but I am a little salty about that. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the books that I read this month and which I enjoyed and which I didn't. The first 3 books I'm going to talk about, I spoke more about in my video for reading books I think I'll hate, so I'll try to be brief here. The first book I read was Bunny by Mona Awad, and in this book we're following our main character, whose name I've completely forgotten. I think it's Samantha, but I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna call her main character. Our main character, who is in an MFA writing program at Warren College, and in her cohort are 4 other women who call each other Bunny, and we see these women through her eyes, so we get a biased view. She doesn't like them at all. She finds them overtly, sickeningly feminine and very strange. She says that they coo a lot and they hug in a way in which it looks like they're trying to merge their bodies, and they're always dressed in very high femme clothing, and she just does not like them very much. She doesn't like their writing. She doesn't like anything about them. And we follow her as she gets invited into their group, and her life sort of completely goes off the rails and falls apart. This book read like a movie. I thought it was great. It has elements of thriller, it has elements of horror, it has elements of speculative fiction. I thought it was great, and it was one of the standouts from that video. I gave it 4 stars, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really, really liked it. The next book I wasn't so impressed by. It was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, and this book is a slow, soporific look into the life of a young woman who decides not to face any of her traumas and instead turn to sedatives and sleeping pills in order to sleep for an entire year in the hopes that she will wake up and be a brand new human with a new lease on life at the end of this year. Basically that she'll outrun her problems and leave them behind in her past. I thought this book kind of went nowhere, but I don't think I'm one for slow character work, which is what this book was. If you are, I think you would like this more than I did, but for me it kind of went nowhere. I felt that a lot of the plot elements were way too convenient. Like the story happened very conveniently, like the way she got her drugs, the way she enacted her plan, the way she, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but I felt that it was way too convenient how she was able to enact this plan, and overall I just felt the story was meh. I gave it 3 stars because I thought the writing style was pretty good. In terms of writing style, it was an easy read. I read it in about a day and a half. And while the character was irritating, I did find her interesting. So 3 stars. I don't know if I would read any more Ottessa Moshfegh. Maybe I'll give her a second chance. Maybe I'll do a video for giving authors a second chance. I don't know. But yeah, it was a meh, 3 stars. Next we have If We Were Villains by ML Rio, and this was the standout of that video. I gave it 5 stars, and this was about Oliver and his cohort who are in an immersive Shakespeare program at a prestigious school, and we follow them through a semester where there is a murder and their friendship slowly crumbles and falls apart around this murder taking place. It is a dark academia, and I thought it was written very atmospherically and very beautifully. It is written like a Shakespearean tragedy, and the characters speak to each other in Shakespeare quotes, which is not as insufferable as you think it would be, but maybe you find people talking to each other in Shakespeare quotes insufferable, but I personally didn't. I thought it made sense. The characters were all gripping and interesting, and their arcs were all really good, and I mentioned in that video that this book gets compared to Donna Tartt's The Secret History a lot, and again, I'll make it known that I prefer this to A Secret History. The Secret History I did not like. So if you're gonna read one of the two, or if you didn't like Secret History, I would recommend trying If We Were Villains, and yeah, it was the better Dark Academia to me. The next book I read for my local book club group, and it is The Roughest Draft. And in this book, we follow two co-authors who are estranged, and they come back together to write one final book. There's one final book on their contract that they have due, and they need to write it. So we follow them as they come back together, and it is a romance. So, you know, as they come back together and eventually fall in love. But I felt that this book was overly long and it dragged. I gave it a generous 2 stars because I thought the writing style was pretty okay, but it dangles things in front of you and drags them out way too long. So there, for instance, there is a plot point of how they became estranged in the first place, and it drags that out to like over, I think, beyond half of the book. It's obvious why they were estranged. You don't really need to be told why they were estranged, and it sort of drags this moment out to past half the book and then reveals why they're estranged, and it's like no big deal really. It just kind of goes nowhere from there. And the dueling, it's told in flashbacks and present day, so sometimes the timeline gets a little confusing. Yeah, I think I said I gave this a generous 2 stars, but I didn't really like it. No one in the book group really liked it, to be honest. It was kind of a miss for all of us. I think one person gave it no stars. So yeah, here's hoping the next pick next month is gonna be good. The next book I read was Hijab, Butch, Blues by Lamia H, and this is a coming-of-age memoir where they take us through their life and liken their struggles, their coming out, various impactful moments in their lives to that of the prophets in the Quran. And there is also a chapter on Allah in here that is really, really beautiful. They write about what Allah means to them and how Allah factors into their life. And it's just one of the most beautifully written things that I've ever read. This whole book is amazing. I've read it twice already. I want to go through it a 3rd time to highlight what was significant to me, but I genuinely think I'll highlight the whole book. Like it was just that important to me. This is by a queer Muslim author, and to me that's very, very important. This started me on my journey to looking for more books that are written by queer Muslim authors, and I will be doing a video in the future about books that are written by queer Muslim authors, so look out for that. I just have to do a lot more reading. But yeah, I can't gush more about this book. It's not very long. It reads very quickly. It's very beautifully written. The subject is just, it's not one that I thought I would ever encounter, and there's certain lines in this book that were just so important for me to see in print that I teared up at some of them. And yeah, I love this book, and I think you should check it out. On a complete 180 in topic, the next book I read was Sorry Bro by Taline Vaskuni, and this is a romance that follows a young Armenian woman named Nara. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, but we follow this young Armenian woman as she goes on a hiatus with her boyfriend at the beginning of the book, and at the urging of her mom later on, decides to join this week-long cultural event called Explore Armenia. And the reason she joins is ostensibly to scope out some high-profile Armenian men to see if she vibes with any of them, basically, because she wants to entertain her mom's idea of marrying someone Armenian. But instead of hitting it off with any of the men they scope out, she meets an Armenian woman. And I don't want to say her name because I will butcher it, and I'm sure it's a very beautiful name, and I will destroy it, so I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce it. But we follow Nara and her love interest as they slowly come together and fall in love. We follow Nara on her journey as she goes from a closeted bisexual woman to an out bisexual woman. I thought this book was a comfortably predictable romance. If you are in the mood for a romance that's a little tropey and you know what's happening, but you want to read it anyway because it's cozy and it's not going to pull any punches or surprises on you, I would recommend this book. I gave it 3 stars. I thought Nara was slightly annoying as a character. She was a little, I think she's 27 or 28 in this book. I think 27. But she does act a little juvenile at times. She calls out at one point feeling like her awkward 13-year-old self, which I don't know that I felt like my 13-year-old self at 27, but maybe I'm being nitpicky. There was also a character point where she's constantly worried about her hair frizzing up and turning curly. This was explained, and there are reasons as to why she is so adamant about her hair being in its nice sleek state, but yeah, I found her behavior around it a little juvenile. But yeah, 3 stars. I thought it was cute. The romance was handled very nicely. It was adorable. There are Armenian proverbs at the beginning of every chapter that are lovely to read. There are some sentences in Armenian that aren't translated. Most of them are translated in English, so you can understand what they're saying, but there's a couple that aren't translated, but with context you can kind of get what they're talking about. So yeah, I liked this book. I thought it was cute. Next we have a book recommended by my friend. This is a young adult novel. It is called Bruised, and it is by Tanya Boteju. Trigger warning for self-harm. If you are sensitive to stories about self-harm, I would fast forward past this segment. Yeah. So this book follows Daya, a young Sri Lankan teenager. She is 18, I believe, 18 or 19 at the start of this book. And she loses her parents in a car crash and is having a very hard time coming to terms with their loss. And in order to deal with that loss, she bruises herself on purpose. We open with her after, it explains the car crash. We open with her slamming her hand on her headboard in order to cause a bruise on her palm that she can poke at throughout the day. And this is apparently a daily ritual for her. She needs bruises to feel pain, to be able to push into them and feel the pain throughout the day so that she can feel grounded and not have to deal with all of the emotions that are threatening to bubble up around the loss of her parents. So we start the book with her losing her parents, and we then kind of learn about her bruising. We learn about how she is into skateboarding because she can fall and hurt herself and get bruises. And we get to a point where she feels like she has reached a peak with her bruising, and she needs to find, or she needs something else to cause more bruises to her body. And at that point in the story, she encounters her friend, takes her to a roller derby show, and she realizes that she wants to join roller derby because she's gonna get so many bruises if she joins this team. And instead, she, joins this team, and we follow her journey as she grows as a person, as she falls in love, as she, as her team becomes her family, and as she starts slowly coming to terms with the fact that her parents are gone. And I felt that this was the found family aspect was really good. I loved the love story in this. I can't speak to how well the self-harm was handled. I personally didn't find it to be disturbing. I thought to me it was very sensitively handled, but I can't be, that's just my personal opinion. But I thought this book was very good. I gave it 3.5 stars. It is, I think I mentioned, it is a young adult, and I read it mostly for the Sri Lankan rep because I'm looking for South Asian queer representation in literature, and my friend recommended this, and the protagonist Daya is queer and Sri Lankan, and her love interest is a girl. So there is a sapphic romance in this, but yeah, I gave this 3.5 to 3.75 stars. It was a little young for me. I don't usually read young adult very often, but I thought this was a good story and I would recommend it. Next, we have my favorite book from this month. I mean, I know I gushed about Hijab, Butch, Blues, but this just made me smile like an idiot, and it is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. This book, it says right on the cover, a warm and witchy hug of a book, and it does, in fact, feel like a hug. This is the coziest of books. I loved it from start to finish. Like I said, it made me smile like an idiot. I smile like an idiot when I think about it. I am upset there aren't any special editions out there because I want like a very nice hardbound special edition with sprayed edges so that I can display it on my shelf, because I ordered this from Barnes & Noble and it already has a crease in the back of it, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, this book is great. We have our titular witch, Mika Moon, and she is, well, first let's start with the witches. The witches in this book, in this society where magic is real, can't or shouldn't or are advised against meeting or being together or, you know, building community or long-term community with each other, because having that much magic in a place at one time is not advisable. Something could go wrong. So these witches in England meet once every 3 months to catch up on news, etc. They tell the people in their lives who are non-magical that this is a book club. But they meet once every 3 months to catch up on news, and then they go their separate ways, and they're not supposed to interact with each other beyond these meetings because that much magic in one place is going to cause an issue. So we meet Mika Moon, who is frustrated at the fact that she doesn't have any community, that she can't meet with her fellow witches beyond once every 3 months, and she is lonely, and because of the events that have taken place in her life, she hasn't really set down roots anywhere. She moves every few months to a different place, and she does YouTube videos or TikTok videos. No, I think it's YouTube videos. They don't specify, but she does videos online where she pretends to be a witch, and she kind of does like this whole thing where she's in a potion shop and she brews these fictional potions. But one day she gets a note asking her for help, and the person who's written the note says that she knows that she is a witch and asks for her help in raising these 3 witches who are at this place called Nowhere House, these 3 young witches, and asks for her help in tutoring them. And at first she's like, this is just some BS and I don't know what these people are, but she's intrigued, so she does go investigate, and she does find out that yes, in fact, there is a place called Nowhere House, and there are a couple of characters living there. We have a librarian, and we have an actor, and we have the actor's husband, who is the groundskeeper, and we have a housekeeper. And sure enough, there are 3 very young witches who are living there, and they have no idea how to utilize their magic. So Mika does in fact decide to stay there and tutor them, and we follow them as they grow closer together as a family, and Mika opens up and she sets down roots, and it's just the cutest, wholesome story. I am a sucker for found family. Found family trope is my favorite thing. You want me to read a book, tell me there's a found family in it, I will read it, and I will probably give it 5 stars. There is also a romance in this, and the romance is very, very cute. It's arc. It's very adorable. You want them to get together. You're rooting for them. But there is one scene. There is one smutty scene that is jarring because the overall tone of the book is like a fairy tale. It's very cute. It's very twee. I loved it, and this one scene is kind of jarring, but it goes back to it ends very quickly. It's a couple pages long, but yeah, it goes back to its regular tone right after that scene, and it's fine. But it was a little jarring. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. I love it so much. It's the cutest. If you liked Legends and Lattes, and if you liked House in the Cerulean Sea, you're gonna love this. I would say if you liked One Last Stop and House in the Cerulean Sea, this is like the perfect book for you because it's got the great found family aspects of both books. It's got the romance. It's lovely. It is a hug of a book, and I think I'm gonna read, I know the trifecta of cozy books right now is like Legends and Lattes, this, and Half a Soul. So I'm gonna pick up Half a Soul next because I want this cozy feeling to continue for as long as I possibly can have it because it's so nice. This book is great. I highly recommend it. I don't know if I mentioned, but I gave it 5 stars. Love it. And finally, we have Always Been Here by Samra Habib, and the subtitle is A Queer Muslim Memoir. I found this book after reading Hijab, Butch, Blues. I went to Lamia H's Instagram, and on the Instagram was a post with a list of books by other queer Muslim authors, and this was mentioned on there. So I picked this up immediately, and I loved it. This is a coming-of-age memoir. It follows the author's life from Pakistan to Toronto, Canada, and how they realize they're queer, and the journey they take to understand their queerness, to open up to their family about their queerness, the journey away from Islam that they take, and then how through their queerness they reconnect with Islam. Yeah, it was interesting. It was ultimately, they do experience quite a bit of trauma in their life, but ultimately the tone of this book was uplifting and hopeful and fierce and authentic, and I loved it. A note, Samra Habib's pronouns are they, them, and the bio in this book is outdated. It uses outdated pronouns. So yeah, just be aware of that. Samra Habib's pronouns are they, them. I would highly recommend this, especially if you read Hijab, Butch, Blues. This is another book that is very important to me now. I am going to be looking for more queer Muslim reads, and yeah, this was great. I love this. It was written very well. Again, I can't gush enough about this book. It was great. I have one DNF for this month, and that was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was one of the books I read for my Books I Think I'll Hate video, and this was the one book that I truly ended up hating. I DNF'd it at 60%. I found it to be extremely boring. I didn't connect with any of the characters. I didn't care about the central mystery. There was no chemistry between the characters. It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling. I should have opened with that. It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai. I think 1920s Shanghai. But yeah, with that plot summary, you know, I was expecting something that would surprise me, and it didn't. It was boring and slow, and I DNF'd it, and I don't think I will go back to it, and I don't think I will be reading any more Chloe Gong, but maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. And for books that I am in the middle of, I am currently reading I Kissed Shara Wheeler and Under the Whispering Door. There's no way I'm going to complete these in the next 2 days, so they don't technically count, but I am in the middle of them. I'm actually pretty early on in Under the Whispering Door, and I am pretty far along in I Kissed Shara Wheeler, but yeah, I am enjoying both of these books, and yeah, that is my roundup for February. Roundup. For some reason, I want to call these roundups, or I think of them as roundups, and I call them roundups, and they're wrap-ups. Everyone on BookTube calls them wrap-ups, and I should be calling them wrap-ups, but for some reason, I call them roundups, and I don't know. I've got to start calling them wrap-ups. But yeah, that was my February wrap-up. I will see you in the next video. Bye!